Amazing. Amazing, amazing experience. So magical. Everything that happened. It felt like actual, real, like, not that it hasn't felt like fantasy before, but that was like anime movie level of fantasy. It was like Studio Ghibli level of fantasy. The whole experience. It was so good from start to finish. And it was absolutely absurd in so many amazing ways. I'm absolutely blown away. I can't believe that. Oh, we're really going through the memories, hey? Wow. The end of an era, the end of a saga, a journey, you know? Since 2013. So technically 2011. I guess if you include 1.0, it's, you know, 2010, 2011 era or so. Depending on, oh, sorry, how far back you played. That was so good. And the like last duty fight too, like the last fight is just amazing. Original Graha. This is like, look at all these little baby characters. This was from the Realm Reborn days. This game is amazing. Glad I picked it up. At least gives me time to grind for some new gear. Oh yeah. And that's the thing, is like you can never. Someone messaged me actually and said and asked like, when is it, like, is it too late to start Final Fantasy XIV? And I was like, no, God no, absolutely not. Like the best time to start Final Fantasy XIV was yesterday. You can't go wrong starting it today, you know? Like I honestly, I stand by that too. It's such an experience, and like while it's founded on its very good story, it's truly like its own, it is your own journey, you know what I mean? So I always remember like my friends trying to get me to like play WoW and stuff like that back in the day, and like I was so lost because I didn't mechanically know a lot of stuff, right? I just like to like journey out and learn things and play around and whatever else. And like while WoW is great, like when I was playing WoW, especially more recently, I was saying like, I always said like Final Fantasy XIV was the best teacher when it came to MMORPGs. Like I learned WoW. I learned WoW by learning Final Fantasy XIV, because Final Fantasy XIV showed me everything first. And in terms of like how to do things, because it's kind of like same but different, right? Just because they're both tab targeting. But like even 14, like there is mechanics and stuff like that. Like the reason that you can learn those fights so okay, so like the thing with boosts, right, is like you can boost, that's fine, but there's so many things that are taught to you mechanically as you progress and do things, that like you recognize the patterns, you recognize the stack markers, the different sorts of things that you're supposed to do to like master a mechanic or like get past something, you know what I mean? So like it's something that like it's something that like you just remember those things, you know, you remember the danger zones and the stack markers and so on and so forth. Like you just remember them, right? And it carries through and onwards, and like even things that like raise up the sky, or like, you know, just stuff that like bosses, like hard reads on bosses and stuff like that. It's great though. Even taking a break, I still remembered how 14 works, and that's like a good thing about it too. I remember like I played 14 for a very long time, and I started on PS3, and then I played on PS4 for about a year, and then I took a long break between A Realm Reborn and the sort of like latter half of Heaven's Ward in anticipation for Stormblood. I remember like I took a long break, I remember, because I was just like I wasn't feeling it as attached to the game. And even coming back after like a longer hiatus, I was like, oh my god, like this just, you know, it still feels like home, even from a controller player, right? Like I was a controller player back then, and then I set up my keybinds and everything and progressed through Heaven's Ward. Like it's never too late to learn too, like different inputs as well. And like controller is still very good. It's actually like so much fun. to play on controller. And then playing on controller too makes it feel like it could be like its own adventure at times. Whereas like sometimes, you know, if you play keyboard or mouse, it feels like its own, feels very much so like an MMORPG, right? Which is it's standard PC MMORPG, I should say. Controller makes it feel a little bit more like a how do I say it? Like a journey in a sense. But the best part is you can go between both, right? Do the expansions keys still keep adding new features too? Yes, yes. And like everything is active. The best thing about Final Fantasy XIV is they find a way to make it so there's incentive to visit old content or explore old content, like stuff from like farming relic weapons to like farming gear, or even just like doing the content, right? Like there's stuff that has, for example, like in Stormblood, there's stuff that has like hidden raids, like a hidden 48 man raid behind like a whole area of content. And like you can, it's totally optional. Like you can choose to do it if you want to, but it's worth doing for the experience alone, right? Shadowbringers has similar as well. There's stuff like Palace of the Dead. People still do Palace of the Dead all the time because it gets them like cool looking weapons, mounts, other sort of cool like rewards, glamour pieces, like transmog stuff, right? So like there's always an active player base going through all this extra content. And even when you like relic farming and stuff like that, relic farming incentivizes you to play older content, like go farm like old fates and whatnot. So like you go back and then those areas feel more populated, for example, because there's players that are doing like end game stuff, but in like an area that's 2 expansions past kind of thing. But it's worthwhile because they're farming it there. And it's easy for them to farm there. So it makes the world feel more lively. And then when there's like events too, like events that like surround like fate farming in general in certain areas, it gets even better because then people are running around and having a good time. And like I always thought like imagine being a new player and seeing like all these people doing this event and be like, whoa, like this game's so active. And it is. I mean, you see it in Limsa Liminsa, right? When you teleport to Limsa, it's a like living, breathing hub for players. That is it just is the most convenient hub too, because the market board is like literally right there next to the summoning bell, next to the crystal. So people always do it. And then you just like AFK there, and you find people will are AFK there. And then depending on what data center you're on, there might be even more to it. Like, you know, there's some data centers that have really good housing groups. Or like a stronger role-playing group where people like congregate more so. This makes me feel much better about continuing 14. I had me worried for a few minutes it would get too dull. Oh no. If you find things that you like and visit them, like there's just so much you can choose to do, right? I'll show you this video afterwards. There's this great trailer that they put out like I think 2 or 3 years ago, which kind of describes it as like your ideal world. Like it's an isekai in a sense, where it's like it's these anime's characters that like it's a Japanese commercial. There's these anime characters that like go through different pieces of content. They like come home from work and then they turn into their avatars and they go explore different pieces of content. Like you can do that, and like everything is still popular. Or like there's things that have leaderboards to it. PvP has leaderboards. House of the Dead has leaderboards, which is like leveling and stuff like that. Crafting and gathering is amazing in 14 though, and like that also gets better because every expansion they build up on it too. So crafting and gathering gets its own storyline, and then there's also instance content for crafting and gatherers called Diadem and Heaven's Award. So as you get there, you get to go explore that kind of stuff, and then like for example fishing, they have ocean fishing and stuff, and like it just like they always think of ways to update. Like there's a guy that still updates like chocobo racing. You know what I mean? Like there's still updates for that stuff. There's still updates for everything, right? So like knowing that though is like the goal is to make sure you're not overwhelmed, right? So players will easily be like, oh my god, I have to 100% everything. I have to clear all the quests. I have to. I cannot. I have to, right? And like you don't. Like 14 is a game where you can choose to do what you want to do. It's a theme park, right? It doesn't have to be like you shouldn't and you can't let it overwhelm you. Just take solace in knowing that there's tons of stuff that you could do if you want to. Like even for our free company, like it's like we'll host groups of like different stuff that we want to do. It's like, hey, anyone feel like doing this thing? Queue up for it. Anything feel like doing this thing? Oh, we'll organize a day where we all focus on it and stuff like that, right? So like you can gather people, you can find groups too. You can find PvP groups, you can find craft and gather groups, you can find Eureka groups, you can find dedicated groups for kind of everything that has its own niche in 14. And like again, that's the best part about it. So right now you're playing this MMORPG that is really founded on its sort of central story. It's very strong in its story, and then everything else just is just enjoyably all around it. Fraud prevention analyst. Whoa! This guy's got important jobs. But it is truly like any other MMORPG. Like, you can choose to play it as much as or as little as you want to, and the devs always keep that in mind too. You know, some of the only devs that'll tell you to take breaks is Final Fantasy XIV devs. It's always optional. It's always enjoyable in 14. You know, you can play as much or as little as you want to, and also dailies. There's dailies too, and that's another thing too. I talked about in my WoW versus Final Fantasy XIV video. To touch on this really quick, and then I'll stop yapping. I'm sorry. They like integrate old content really well into 14 through roulettes. So roulettes get you the best experience as your dailies every day, and they give you just like a random dungeon or whatever else, right? Like you can level classes, alternate classes, mind you, that are all in one character, also very efficient. Through roulettes exclusively if you wanted to, and like roulettes make it so that every piece of content still feels fresh. So for like all those players that are making it through old content, they can just like enjoy it. You know, they know that there's going to be a queue for it. You're going to queue eventually for it, right? It's great. Nothing gets stale. There's always a way to like loop back old stuff. Loop it back in. Don't put it to waste. Which of the two new jobs do you like the best, by the way? Oh, they're both really good. That's the problem. I don't think I could pick one. Eternal will for sure say Reaper, but Sage is so cool. Sage, you feel like a Gundam, dude. You feel like a Gundam healer. It shoots laser beams at the things, the weapons, you know? It's like a DPS heal. It's so cool. Such a unique healing class. It's really good. I think if I was to pick one or the other, I'd probably pick Reaper. Yeah. It's like I ironically like my my scholar and stuff like that for my other heals. I think Sage will be great to level, and it has the appeal. Oh, it's so flashy, it's so pretty, right? But it's just like Reaper is just so cool. Reaper is super damn cool. I mean, you see even saw Xenos using those Reaper abilities. It just feels good, you know? All I can say is I can't believe a certain someone dragged a certain someone down to the depths of hell for being a certain someone. That is insane. I was gonna say, funny enough though, you're cooking me food too? I'm making pizza. I made some pizza pops. Better Hot Pockets. Canadian Hot Pockets. I want some. I was just gonna say, oh, what was I gonna say? I forgot what I was gonna say. That's okay. Bum, 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 bum. There's just always something to do. Oh man, seeing Susano in that cutscene, by the way, was so cool. Oh, he's got the best attitude of all the primals. He's just so like, let the revels begin. He's the best. Stormblood was awesome. I don't care what anyone says. People did not like Stormblood. Whatever, dude. You're wrong, and that's okay. It's okay to be wrong. That Stormblood was amazing. I'm pretty sure like Endwalker like tied up every loose end, hey? Like every possible angle in some sort of to some extent was like wrapped up this expansion. It's so cool. Like I said, I'm really interested to see what the new 1.0 content is gonna be. Sorry, I've asked way too many questions. No, not at all. Like literally not at all. I appreciate the company, and like, please ask me questions. I think any 14 player would ask this would say the same thing. Ask me questions, you know? It was great. It was great. Agreed. I'm happy to hear questions. You gotta remember, this is something that like a lot of people care about, and people are even more diehard than I am. I'm just one man, you know? I think for me, it's like similar to you. Like I enjoy the essence of what 14 is. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Hilariously enough, my interests are polar opposites of one another. You know, maybe not polar opposites, I should say, but like Final Fantasy XIV is one of my favorite games, and then And then the other side of things is I love Dark Souls and like Elden Ring. I'm super excited for, and like all that stuff. I'm so excited for. Those are my two, you know. How do you feel about the bamboozle with your friends? Square Enix pissed me off, but I was happy. I was like, there's no way, you know. I remember when I got kicked from a guild for asking too many questions. No way, man. That's weird. That's weird. Those people are weird. That's a weird thing to do. that's like rude and also just weird. If you're asking questions, you just want to like learn the game. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, like a lot of free companies in 14 are like very much so like, hey, ask questions. We have a whole, like in our guild, we have a whole thing that's like requests, ask questions, noob questions, request help. You know what I mean? So weird. People are weird. People are weird and entitled, man. And like sometimes you need to remember that like some people just don't have anything better to do, and sometimes it is their life to do certain things. And so like if you're not on their level or they feel imposed upon, then they're like that. But like, just weird, man. Just weird. Like, relax, damn. Relax and enjoy too. I think I've only ever kicked someone from the guild for just general misconduct. And I remember one guy was just regurgitating all the toxic memes about 14. And I was like, man, like, it's not funny. Like, what the stuff you're saying, you don't even understand the stuff you're saying. You're just regurgitating stuff you saw like on Twitter or like on certain Reddit forums and stuff like that. And it got so annoying. I remember being like, dude, stop. I get it. I know you want to be like in the loop, but like this stuff is not funny, or is it amusing? Like and if you think it is, we're not your group, basically. And he was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, listen, dude, if you don't get why I'm upset, then like you should probably leave. And he just left. I was like, all right, cool. Both let's part ways. But that was it. That's like, it's been very rare that I have to actually do that. Makes me forget that 14 players are more chill for the most part. Oh my god, absolutely. And that's the thing, is like you'll find that like those sort of more hardcore players, and like even hardcore players are nice players. Like raiders are nice players for the most part. They want people to succeed, so they have more people to play with, right? And we got a little shout out at the end there. And I'll Final Fantasy 14 players. But like you know what you're signing up for if you're getting into that stuff, right? And by that point you've already chosen to have that as a thing. Wow, here we go. Oh. And friends. Oh yeah. You know the game is good when you can say I'm new to a new dungeon. And they'll just say okay. And they'll help you. The war. Wow. Oh my god, what a beautiful piece of art. Still scared to tank though? It just takes practice. Like people will offer pointers.